Truth Connections.
What's real, what's deception, what should we pay attention to? What is it that's driving us insane?
I think it's time we stop.
Truth Connections.
Stop. Something happening here.
Truth Connections.
Good evening. This is Kathy, and you are listening to Truth Connections Radio. This is our first show in 2013, and we are very happy to be here with you. Tamara and I started Truth Connections because we have a passion for the truth and justice and believe that information should be free and shared. We choose, instead of having commercials or asking for donations, we decided to showcase independent and unsigned artists, and our intro was created by Thomas Foot and Tamara Natividad, and it features dubs from one of our featured artists called Villains Like You. We have a very exciting year ahead planned with many great guests to share with you this year. To see who is scheduled to appear with us, please visit our truthconnections.wordpress.com website. And to listen to archives, find books from our past guests, and to check out our new free documentary directory, visit that website as well. We are grateful and honored that we have resonated with so many of you. And now on with the show. Every healthy person will have a certain energy frequency. Tonight's topic is radionics and chi. Radionics is often called a pseudoscience in mainstream medical circles, while they ignore the abundance of provable data that suggest otherwise. Tonight we have two brilliant minds with us. The first is John MacDonald, with over 30 years of research experience alongside the renowned inventor Carl Hans Wells, who, by the way, I had the pleasure of speaking with yesterday, and he gave us lots of free links that related to this topic, and I will share those with everyone before the break, and Samara will make sure they are tagged in the YouTube once it's uploaded, so everyone can continue to access them. Thank you in advance for that, Carl. Really appreciate it. John has over 2 decades of live interaction and instruction with Carl Wells using Carl Wells technology, specifically for personal mind control management, and is considered by many the master of problem solving with radionics and advancements in ESP, also known as extrasensory perception. With these devices, while offering step-by-step instruction, John has also written a book that will be part of an ongoing series called the Brain Evolution Manual Series. It is, in fact, a sensory perception awareness training course. So welcome, John MacDonald, to the show. John, welcome. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for being here.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Also with us, back for the 4th time, is Jeff Harvey of JeffTech.net. He is a board-certified Quorum nutrition consultant with a specialty in disease reversal. Jeff is also a military-trained remote viewer and has spent 6 years working with the United States Navy Electronics Unit assigned to the aircraft carrier USS John F. Kennedy CV-67 Naval Intelligence Center. Jeff also brings with him 13-plus years of health research and is highly trained in low-frequency sound therapy, Reiki, crystal, and orgone use, and radionics and the paranormal Shakti technology. This technology can be used to open up, to get chi flowing, or to even enhance a desired outcome, such as courtrooms. And why not? The government probably has many of these directed towards various congressmen or governing bodies to sway the decisions for their desired outcome, and I think it's time we level the playing field. Imagine the good we could do. Please help me welcome Jeff Harvey to the show. Welcome back.
Hi, Kathy.
How are you?
So far, so good. I think I still have a pulse.
It's so nice to have my favorite Jedi boy back on the show.
Thank you. It's been a long prep day for this because I was prepping right up until about 3 minutes before when I spoke with you and John, so it's going to be an interesting time tonight.
Well, I'm sure you'll break it down easy for our listeners to understand. because I studied a lot for this, and I still feel like an infant when it comes to the information. But what would you like to first begin by breaking down the physics of the technology?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's go over a couple of principles first that are going to lay the foundation for what we're going to do. Now, we're going to do a very deep dive into quantum physics on this, but we're going to do it at a level that everybody will be able to see and understand quickly, and it'll literally only take a couple of minutes. So one thing that we know about, and we've all heard about this for years now, that every particle in the universe is connected to every other particle. That's number one, and very interesting stuff. Let's go to another piece that will be foundational in this. Now, as you know, many years ago, they came up with electron microscopes to get way deep down in looking at structures. And they now have a microscope that goes even deeper. They can see the lattice structure within an atom or a group of atoms. But if you understand the point that as we get older as a civilization, we get to see deeper and smaller and smaller. And something that has come to light recently, I've been looking at some of the data from Lieutenant Colonel Thomas Bearden on radionics and quantum physics. He was looking for a detector for gold when he was down at the bottom of a cliff and he was looking up at a rocky, craggy cliff. He wanted to know if there was a vein up there or a deposit, and he wanted to be able to sort it out from, let's say, silver or lead or something. And he was hoping that radionics would do that job for him. Although it didn't, it led him into a whole bunch of other areas. And they've found that down in the nucleus of the atom, there are, I would say, particles or something like that that are far smaller. So small we aren't even measuring them yet, but that will come in time. But in each nucleus of each atom, there is an imprint of everything that has come before it. So when you talk about DNA memory or genetic memory, what you're really talking about is way, way down deep. Everything that's ever been exposed to light is in there in the smallest amount. And when the day comes we can measure some of those things, we'll have some of these underpinnings. Now, Carl Wells, who is the fellow who basically built the technology into what it is today, you know, he took from the predecessors that had built their radionics devices, and he took from Wilhelm Reich, who is building orgone generators, and Carl made them about 10,000 times more powerful. He built orgonite, and then he designed superorgonite, and he, to this day, keeps refining that formula. So he has actually been the leader in powered radionics throughout the entire planet.
Just to backtrack for a second, this technology was first discovered in the 1800s, correct?
Way back, yes. Okay. Very, very far back. Abrams and others were playing with it, and I'm sure someone before them that never got into the books. But the bottom line is that if you realize that there's an imprint of everything, and every particle is connected to every other, you now have an underpinning that basically says that you should be able to affect anything. Now we're going to go out to a little deeper physics just for a second. So we understand those two concepts. Now we have a concept called the vacuum, the ether, or whatever you'd like to call it out there, dark matter, whatever. And there's about 10 physicists right now that are working on this. And basically, they look at it as a huge, chaotic, but sometimes coherent structure, and with an unmeasurable amount of particles and things coming into being, into existence, and then fading right back out in a split second, and they're called ghost forms.
I sometimes jokingly call it Wonka vision.
Exactly, exactly. So if you think about it, you're seeing that particles of gold, silver, lead, particles of flesh and matter come into existence for such a short period of time it's not measurable. Well, what they've found is that if you feed one of these ghost forms energy, they start sticking around longer and they become more coherent, which means that you're getting order out of chaos, and you're actually getting them coming into manifestation or physical being. And if you feed it long enough, and it's something that's possible first, probable second, you can literally make something happen. And that's the basis of the technology we use.
In ancient times, didn't they use crystal balls and dowsing rods and like a string with a weight pendulum on it in a similar fashion?
Well, if you think about it, what were they doing? They were focusing on that pendulum. They were focusing on that crystal ball. And when we use a radionics device, we're focusing on what it is we want to accomplish.
Right.
And the way that really works is each hemisphere of your brain puts out scalar waves. You can call them scalar waves, life energy, biofield, chi, prana, ode, whatever you want.
We have our own built-in fringe tech.
Exactly. We are interferometers. We interfere with each hemisphere. So if you look at what a holographic waveform is, it's basically two laser beams pointed at the same target, but one of them goes in just before and strikes the other laser beam and creates an image of whatever is imprinted on it, and that makes a hologram. Right. Well, in effect, that's what we're doing with each hemisphere of our brain. When you focus on a target, whatever it is, a person, a place, a thing, a situation, you're basically creating an interference pattern with these waves. Now, the radionics device, because Carl designed these to have generators in them, chi generators, they generate also a massive electron flow. And these waves are actually directable with your mind. And what happens is you can actually focus your mind on something, and your waves are going out to the target or the trend, which is something that you're going to use to get there. And the generator links with that field and guides the energy to it. So what happens is long after you've stopped focusing on it and you're off having dinner or whatever, that generator's still running and putting energy to that ghost form. And it keeps feeding it and it keeps energizing it till it either comes to fruition or you hit an obstacle. And John's going to go into that in great detail on obstacles. But basically, if you hit an obstacle and you don't get your target acquired, then you simply figure out what your obstacle is and rework your program around it. And your program is basically what you're going to use to get past it. And John's going to go into a couple of examples about it. So if you look at all these items that we're doing, we're basically saying that you can direct these energies to anything you want. You can actually create something out of the vacuum that was not here in physical space before by actually focusing those energies on it and keeping it flowing for days and weeks, whatever it takes to get it done.
Because physical reality is, in effect, theoretically changeable, right?
Correct. That's the basis behind everything we do. Right.
John, would you like to go into what Jeff was speaking about?
Sure. As far as the chi energy, or orgone energy, since everything is either energy or matter, as far as we know so far, nothing is touching on a molecular level. There's space between everything. In that space vibrates your chi field that makes you Kathy and makes you Jeff. It's the part, the mind that lives beyond the body, that's going to survive the body. It's been around, and it's got a memory too. But it can be encoded with data. If it's energy, it's data. If it's not data, it's matter. And they do a dance, pretty much. When you focus the energy on the target, when you make the link to the target, say you're setting a radionics setting for your mother. That's an easy one to do, because everybody knows their mom. And it's a sensory perception stimulation that you get when you think of her. Whether it's a quick picture in your head, a smell of her perfume, her laugh. Sometimes it's not even that definable. People they don't go into it. They don't pay attention enough.
Like a sensory memory, like a muscle memory, so to speak.
So if you were to set a radionics setting for that vibration, you would just put your dial at 0 and move it from 0 to 10 a couple of times to get a feel for how the dial moves. And then think of your mother, and as you're moving the dial, there'll be a slight resistance when you hit her frequency. You're looking for the difference in the field, or the resistance. That's the rate for her, and you would leave it right there.
I can't help but think that they could possibly use this in lie detecting devices too. Is that possible, or am I just reaching out there?
No, it's definitely possible. It's basically integrating machinery with psychic ability. So before Carl invented this planet's first chi generator, Everything until this point had been accumulators, which they were just materials stacked, organic materials, metals, fiberglass, and they attracted chi energy and then repelled it at the same time. It was a pulse. Something to do with the metal. It's got similar properties, I guess, opposed to electromagnetic spectrum. It's related to electromagnetic spectrum, but it's definitely a separate energy, as far as we know it anyways. It's like electricity has to travel a stream of electrons on a wire or a wave, where chi energy is everywhere all at the same time. It's in every blade of grass, every mosquito, every human, and it's contained, it's Earth's living field. It's the unified field the conventional science is pretending to look for, but will never find. They'll be the last ones in the door at the dance, pretty much. They can't see past their wallet. Yeah, just short-sighted, but Carl's generator really gave the computer its highest and best use. Before Carl's machine could be integrated with the computer through computer programs, where you can literally make it an artificial intelligence and interface it with your brain. Before that, the computer was just a glorified calculator. Could do graphics, search for information online and stuff, but it wasn't really. Everyone thinks it's our race's greatest invention. They are way off. It's nice and it's convenient, and it's definitely exploded the information age. It's a great tool, but now you can literally have your own artificial intelligence. And like Jeff was saying earlier, it obsesses on your goals. Obsession in a good way. It's focused, and it doesn't get tired, doesn't get emotionally upset, and it keeps going until it will reveal actions you need to take, people you need to talk to, influences you need to use on them to manifest stuff. It's still going to take an action from you. Even the lottery ticket winner had to go buy the ticket, or at least give someone else $1 to go to the store for him. He still had to take an action.
Right.
There's always action involved, but it reveals all the right actions. It'll manifest stuff you may have never manifested before if you weren't using the technology.
What types of manifesting can this be used for?
Anything. But I would say it's your probability factor that determines how much work you've got to do, or if you even have a chance. For example, I had an 85-year-old gentleman trying to get me to use the equipment to have him marry this 18-year-old blonde bombshell that he was in love with.
Oh, my.
So I asked him a couple of questions. You have to determine the probability factor. Those relationships usually happen under one influence, like Hugh Hefner and Ronnie Wood from the Stones. They probably have a good friendship, but it's a monetary thing. I asked him if he was a millionaire. He said no. I asked him if he's a billionaire. He said no. So I said the best I could probably do for you then would be a good friendship. And he says, oh, well, your machinery doesn't work. I said, no, you have no idea how it does work. That's not a probable situation. It's not going to happen unless you're a millionaire.
Yeah, I don't really believe in manifesting love. I know people can do it, but love should be, a natural progression, not something that's manipulated. But I'm sure people out there, use this technology for all sorts of things like that.
Anything you can think of, it can be used for.
Right.
And I would stay away from the destructive part of it, especially if you don't know what you're doing.
Right.
You could shoot yourself in the soul, I guess, so to speak.
Yeah.
Carl's invention, in my opinion, is probably the most important one to date. That's known technology. There's a lot of hidden stuff that's going to be coming to the surface, too. In Carl's machine, you can find the information that's hidden, because you can't hide data. You can put it in a safe, you can surround it with radiation or whatever, but it's vibrated when you think of it, when you talk about it, when you researched it, when other people researched it. It's got its own encoding and its own physical location in our universe.
Where intention goes, energy flows.
Yeah, and you can tune into it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can affect it, extract things from the data stream. They are data streams. The energy is encoded. Like the smell of a rose is a data stream. And your sensory perceptions pick it up. And you try to put it into words, but the words are inadequate. A rose smells like a rose. That doesn't make any sense to someone who's never smelled one before. So if you want to get deeper into the equipment, you start using your sensory perception organs and you start training them with extra energy. So you've got 100% energy of whatever you were born with right now. You take one of Carl's machines, and focus it on your auditory sensory perception, you're putting extra energy into that skill or into that part of the brain with an intent. And so it will improve your hearing, your smelling, your seeing. If you can synchronize all five senses to work as one, those five senses working as one are in themselves a sixth sense, because your brain has never worked like that before. You might have had moments of clarity and a couple of close calls, but all five senses working as one, that can put a smile on your face, and it's another way to operate your brain instead of the trick that's being played on 99% of the human race, the obsessive compulsive training disorder that's going on, that where the overstimulation of the brain with usually auditory and visual.
Well, let's go there for a minute. How can this technology be used to counteract negative scalar waves or electronic harassment or psychic warfare weapons?
That's fun stuff. That's what I've been playing with.
Okay. You want to take that, Jeff?
Yeah, Jeff's good on that. Go ahead.
If you think about it, we're taking a generator, and I'm going to use, for example, mine. Mine is a Rad 5. It's got 5 generators built into it. They're massive. They're built into a ring, several inches tall and about 7 pounds or so heavy. And that's how much superorgonite's in it. What's that, John?
That's what I use too.
Yeah, and John's a master with the 5. He stacks 5s on top of each other.
Yeah, like you're a stacker at it too there, Jeff.
Yeah, he's the master.
Now, what do you mean when you say stacker? Break that down for us.
If you look at a Rad 5 unit, it's got a main box, and that main box is the central processor that does all the work. And it has a cable that goes out to a big ring that's about 7 pounds or so. And this ring is the superorgonite material that creates the energy field when it's pulsed properly. So if you think about it, the field that comes out of this is massive. And so if you take that field, you can actually create a localized field around you and your home, and it doesn't block electromagnetic spectrums. What it does is it helps ameliorate or block the electromagnetic spectrum damage that's being done to your body.
DOR doesn't pulse. DOR is a deadly orgone. It's a static field. It's been destroyed usually by electricity or chemicals. So if it comes in contact with your body, the generator is a pulse. And whenever a DOR field comes in contact with a chi field or orgone field that's pulsing, it resets the field.
Exactly.
Makes it a chi again.
That's one of the things Carl learned a long time ago when he started pulsing these. He found that you could take a deadly orgone accumulator that was hurting people, and you could pulse it and make it alive and new again. And that was something Wilhelm Reich had never been able to accomplish, and Carl was the first doing that. If you make a localized field that helps with that, then you are simply solving most of those issues. And the devices, you can actually take what we call a Radionics power transfer couple, which is a disc that looks a lot like a coaster. And there's 2 pieces to it, a smaller one that goes inside of your generator ring or on the output plate, and the other one you carry in your purse or your pocket. And no matter where you go, you are generating that field because it links those 2 together. So while you're in a crowd, across town at a restaurant, going to see a show, whatever you're doing, that's going on right there.
Sounds like a psychic shield, like a psychic mirror that you set up around your body. Is it similar to that?
Here's how Carl has mapped it out very cleverly. Is structural link. That's what Carl has determined mathematically, which is, I consider it fourth-dimensional math. With his concepts or my physics background and Carl's physics background, I'm usually way off, but it's the mapping. It's how your mind works. Your mind works, it searches in patterns. It looks for patterns, and it notices the pattern it is looking for, and it notices a difference in the pattern, a shift. And that's really all there is, until you start to get into the colors and the sound, and etc. But the structural link, I guess you would call it a correlate. of math or physics is that the shortest distance between 2 points in our universe is a structural link. It's no longer a straight line. That's old math. Since this field vibrates everywhere all at the same time, your location in that field, or your address, is your DNA. Because the DNA on anything, whether it's a blade of grass, a mosquito, or a human, will never be replicated because it's dictated by gravity or planetary positions, which are never in the same place twice. So even identical twins have different DNA. The distance between their body was enough to produce a different stack of the molecules.
Interesting.
So anywhere you are in the unified field, whether you're in China or Florida, and the machine's in China or Florida, if you have a piece of your hair or you're working, blood is good if you're doing workout at the gym, that type of thing, it's a direct structural link to your DNA. If I hit your DNA here and you're in China, you will pulse in China because it's a unified field, and I'm hitting that structure in the field, so you will feel it. That's one of Carl's many brilliant discoveries, too.
One of the things that when you're trying to target something, whether it be yourself, to pulse your field, or another individual, DNA links are very important. So whether it's a piece of hair, fingernail clipping, a drop of blood, my favorite for me is I use a microscope slide. I put a couple of drops of fresh blood on it, and then I put a slide protector over the top of it, which is another thin piece of glass. And then I just label it with a marker on the side what the date is, and I use that to be able to target me if I want to create a field around me. And I use the device for a lot of different things, and many people do. Some people want better astral projection. They want out-of-body experiences. They want to be able to do more lucid dreaming. Well, I did a whole study for several months, and it's up on the Orgone forum that Carl and Renat have. And basically I put in all the different settings that I had and what I experienced that night in the dream state, and by changing the different settings on a regular basis, my brain did not habituate to them, which the brain can do, and I was able to get some pretty staggering things. Now, John, you probably have some interesting ways you've boosted the astral and OBEs and lucid dreaming. Do you want to hit a couple of those, perhaps?
Yeah, I have quite a bit of astral projections. I think 17 nights in a row is the most I've ever hit. And I expected it to become automatic after that. I thought it would be a skill. But it didn't work out that way. I have to be pretty focused to do it. But I developed an exercise called active listening to quiet the mind. The energy that comes out of the generator is raw chi energy. It's got no structure. It's whatever your frequency is pulsing at. If you have all your dials set to 0, it may be pulsing, depending on the model, at 7.83, the Schumann resonance. But it doesn't have any data encoded into it at all. It's just raw energy. And so usually your first step is probably your most important one. Your expectations and your mind direct the energy. So the foundation, you have to expect 100% results for 100% foundation to start. And if you can get 98, 99% manifestation rate, you're doing incredibly well. But the energy is so subtle. It's the energy involved in the mosquito that can land on your arm, suck blood from you, and fly away and you don't even know it. That's how subtle this energy is. That's why it's very important to be in an emotionally happy or in a mentally positive state or no state at all.
Right.
You can be neutral and use all filters and trend settings. A trend would be something like the Kentucky Derby. That photo finish of the nose crossing the finish line, it's got a whole year of training in it. It's got the drugs they give the horses, P-test on the jockeys, the money that's laid on the bets. Every aspect of business you can think of is going to be covered, from the corrupt to the regular business. And who knows what else is going on with those jockeys and the owners and the horses themselves. But that 1 second has got the whole year tied into that photo finish.
Right.
And so it's a great trend to use in competition, in business, anything. It really has a powerful effect. I use that filter a lot.
You know what we should do? We should talk a little bit about archetypes and how that works. When he's talking about the picture of the photo finish, that's considered what we would call an archetype. It has, as John said, a whole history of things behind it. And archetypical symbols, all the way back to some of the oldest rune symbols and other things, are connected with a thought or an energy form. And the more they're used over the centuries and the thousands of years, the more people use them for the same thing, the more they're known for that, and the more they can have an effect on that. So for millions of years, our civilizations have been looking up at the stars, the moon. And if we take the moon just for an instance and look at that as an archetype, we know that the moon influences us. All you have to do is, talk to someone who works in a police station around the full moon.
Very true.
Yeah, or a woman who's having her estrus during that period. It's really rough, and it affects the tides. So how much more does it affect us? John, do you want to discuss a little bit about what the moon can be used for as an archetypical symbol?
Yeah, well, the moon doesn't discriminate between the water in your body and the water in the ocean. In fact, it's all the liquid on the planet. Your blood, your spit, your thyroid, your semen, everything. And it's got two phases, a waxing and a waning. Waxing phase is for creative energy using the moon, which is an emotional generator, basically. And the waning cycle of the moon can be used to destroy alcohol addiction, drug addiction, emotional problems. You can use the moon to dissolve those frequencies in a target, whether they know or not.
Now, there's also something we need to think about. We were talking about all these basics that we put together about the particles being connected. We're sending out the energy with the generator, and we're using our mind to link those energies. And we link them to archetypical symbols, which, as Carl says and John was talking about, they are structural links to what we want to accomplish. So a trend or something we want to use to affect our getting to the target is something we would use. So a picture of the moon would be an archetype we would use to get an effect, like building something up if it was going towards the full moon, or tearing something down, like an addiction or something like that, as it's going down from the full moon. So you can use all kinds of archetypical symbols, and as John was saying, for competition, you got the Kentucky Derby, that's a good one. Massive raw energy, maybe a 4th of July fireworks explosion, maybe a massive dam running over water and creating lots of chi energy, a picture of the sun which puts out massive amounts of energy, things like that. Depending on what kind of an operation you're going to do, you'll want different archetypical symbols. And one of the blessings of the internet is you've got hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of pictures you can use to link to their energies. And something that maybe, and I'm not sure exactly how to put this to you, but if you think about these symbols, you can say that they have a life or energy of their own, or if you're someone who goes into deep psychological research, you may look upon them as keys to unlock your abilities you already have that we simply don't know about. So these symbols might actually be keys to unlock things.
Jeff, do you have to use an actual photograph for the archetype, or can you just put the thought process behind it with intention and think of that archetype?
Well, from childhood, we all just use the thought, and we use both hemispheres of our brain to create a radionics operation. But as you get a little older and you start realizing that different symbols mean different things and they have a lot more power, then because you get taught what the power is behind them, then that gives your mind more to use. You could still use just your mind, but by focusing on the picture, thinking about those things that are imbued in that. I have one picture of somebody on an ice cliff, climbing up an ice cliff, and it's sheer, straight, vertical cliff, and he's climbing this thing, and he's really determined to get up there. I use that when I'm looking for determination sometimes.
Now, Ken, this may be way out there, but I know from experience from living in Miami, during a hurricane, if any woman is within 30 days to her delivery date for having a baby, she is, if there's a bad storm coming, they're supposed to check into the hospital. Do weather patterns have any role to play in this?
as far as your ability to use it, we look at a lot of different things. John, what do you look at when you do that?
Well, that's a specialty, I guess they call it cloud busting, using overgrown accumulators or generators to make it rain or stop the rain. Trevor Constable was a very good scientist, a leader in that field. He's got a book out called The Cosmic Pulse of Life, which explains a lot of his work. He built some massive generators, some big ones.
We did some, in the old days, you remember, John, they used to make their cloud busters out of shavings of metal. And with shavings and the crystals they used in the pipes, you had a certain amount of energy you could generate. But Carl, he went a step further. When he used powdered metal, you're increasing the surface area by tens of thousands of times, which increases the power by that much. So Carl came up with a device a while ago called a CEG, and it's a handheld chi generator that you can focus or link to a bigger generator. And a friend of mine and I, we went out one day and we decided to go cloud busting with it and see what the difference between it and a regular cloud buster that you would see in somebody's backyard that they built out of pipes and shavings. And in literally a little over 2.5 minutes, we wiped a cloud out completely. So you're looking at several thousand times more power, and this thing is literally the size of a magic wand you could hold in your hand almost. Quite a device. We call it a chi shooter because the thing literally shoots the chi out. And if you link it to a bigger generator, you can combine the two and basically use it to do quite a bit of work on the weather that way.
Well, it's an automatic structural link generator.
Yes.
Yeah, you can take it into a business meeting, have it in your purse, and you can look at a target when you want to influence to go your way, and just turn it on while you're looking at them. That's enough. But it does have a lens in it. I think that it's like an organic camera. When you point at someone and turn it on, it'll leave an imprint of them on the orgonite, and it transfers into your machine too by structural link if you're using a transfer couple. But the reason Carl's generators are so powerful is because he's the first one to use electromagnetic field. He's using a shift in the electromagnetic field just like the Earth does when it rotates in orbits. And
those cloud busters literally were a knockoff of Carl's technology. They just didn't understand that finer particles get you better coverage.
Right, and what he's done with the donut devices is second generation. Is definitely I can't even put it into words. It's the Rolls Royce of orgone generators.
I feel like I have a howitzer.
Yeah, I feel lost when I don't have mine. Mine's at my daughter's right now.
I know.
I'm getting it till this weekend, and it's like missing your baby or something.
When Evan decided to sell his 2400 HD to a friend of ours, he bought my Rad 5, and it was a while before my new Rad 5 came in, and I got to tell you, I felt naked.
Yeah, I miss it. Literally.
Yeah, it's like a piece of you is gone.
Guys, how simple is it for a newbie to get one of these devices and to utilize it properly?
Very. The 20 years research that Carl and I and quite a few other people have been doing on the chief form of stuff, there's a protocol that will work for a newbie. You don't have to be Carl Wells to make this machine work. You don't have to be able to build one. It's like you might not know how to make a television, but you can use one as good as anybody. It's the same thing with these machines. You follow established steps. One of the most important things is, first of all, the energy to drive the effect, a link to the target, whether it's a target or trend. Most people work on themselves, but there is other people involved in that work usually. Teamwork. And then a link to 1, 2, 3. 1, the energy, 2, the target, 3, the trend. And it's literally that simple. And people make it harder on themselves.
One of the things I think is important is if you're someone brand new to this, your mind control, your ability to control your own mind is important. So if you can focus on something for several minutes without having your mind wander off in 8 different directions, you're going to be exceptionally good at this. So the thing that I suggest everybody does is learn to do a little meditation and clear your mind. And once you're able to do that, you're on the way to mastering these technologies, and you can literally learn that sort of thing in an afternoon or two and be ready and running. Here's something that might be helpful, John. Later on, we might be taking some calls, and people will be asking how to use the generator for a certain type of thing. So I'll throw one at John, and John will knock this out of the park. John, I'm a new guy. I just got my machine in. It's a Rad 2400 HD. It's got a trend and a target, as you know. And I have an older car. It's a 97 Chevy Malibu, and I'd really like to get an upgrade. I'd like a newer car. But I don't make a ton of cash, but I have a job, and I'd like to get a new car. What would I do?
Well, there's several different things you could do. I'd start a trend to see what would be the most probable. Some people are wheeler dealers, and they can barter. They can trade the car up, influence the people that have the car they want, find the car they want with a picture of it, using that as the target for the energy field. Or you can generate more income, but it has to be based on the probabilities. People say, can I make $1 million with it? I got that question today. I said, well, yeah, and they said, how? I said, well, go interview for a job that pays $1 million, and then influence the personnel director to hire you. They have unreal expectations of what people would call magic.
Everybody wants a quick fix, don't they?
Yeah. But it's more fun to work your way through it, because the level of awareness that comes from using the machines, you literally wake up out of the human race, and you see everybody walking around with their face glued to the floor, reading the paper, listening to the television, and walking in circles, doing the same thing every day. Obsessive compulsive disorder. And I have this exercise called active listening. It's in the book. It's the first chapter in the book, and it teaches you to quiet your mind by using a fan or any other type of white noise. It's a breathing exercise where you trick the chemistry lab in your brain, the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus, to kick out enkephalons and endorphins by holding your breath. And the brain is just an organ. It doesn't have a conscience of its own. All it can do is act or react to its direction. So when it starts to go low on oxygen, it starts to panic. It goes into what people call shock. And it will kick out quite a few endorphins and enkephalons. And when you take your final breath, it feels like someone just gave you a shot of Dilaudid or something before an operation. Your whole body will become very relaxed, and your mind just took control of the body with force. Said, I'm in charge of this. And all the brain can do is what it's told to do. So at that point, your mind is in charge of your brain, and you start to listen to the fan. Anytime you have a thought or music or anything breaks your focus, and you start to think about it, as soon as you catch yourself, you go back to the fan. And you keep training your mind to go back to the fan until that's all it's focused on. And the first couple times I was doing this meditation, I would be laying in my bed, and I would hear my body snoring. And that's how I would achieve the astral projection. When I hear my body snoring, I would just simply roll out of it. And that's a very effective way to have out-of-body experiences. Set your alarm clock for about 3 o'clock in the morning. Set it really low so it doesn't tire you out of your sleep.
Sort of like what Jeff talks about when you leave leave a hand up when you're almost asleep, but when your hand drops, you know you went astral.
Yeah, Thomas Edison used to use ball bearings. He'd sit in his rocking chair, and when we hear him hit the floor, he'd write down what he was thinking about. And he made a lot of his best discoveries that way. But whenever I hear my body snoring, I just roll out of bed, turn around, and see myself laying there, and then off to whatever I want to do.
Something we had done a long time ago on the show, Kathy, was panic breathing. And if you recall, that's what I was saying that came from John's book.
Right. It
was a neat exercise that he taught, and it literally helps get you to teach your brain what's really going on and how to control it. And the control is good. So in answer to your question earlier, you were saying, well, how can we deprogram from the programming we had? John's book and using these devices are really phenomenal ways of getting that stuff cleaned out very quickly. So instead of going to a 6-month course on deprogramming, you can literally get out of this stuff in a couple of weeks just by doing the exercises. And you can take a child who's been going to public fool system for several years, and you can deprogram them.
Jeff said public fool system, by the way, everyone, in case you didn't hear that.
Yeah, you'll probably end up having to homeschool them because you're going to be labeled a troublemaker and they're going to want to try to drug them up.
Yeah, once they realize how reality really works, they have a hard time holding their tongue when a teacher is telling them some BS that's not true. I got in trouble when I was in school. My science teacher was misquoting a book, and I simply called him out in the middle of class, and he happened to be my next-door neighbor, so that didn't go well.
Guys,
so, yeah.
I have a question that might be off the wall, but I noticed when I was in sales at various times that there's some nationalities or religious beliefs that they only make major decisions when there's a new moon. Do you know why that is, or is that just an off-the-wall question?
No, that sounds like Wiccan. Wiccan magic or earth magic, whether you're a white witch or a black witch or both.
Right.
Yeah, the witches use the moon a lot.
Does the new moon have more of a good jumping-off point? Is that why people make decisions at when there's a new moon?
Yeah, see, this comes down to the clockwork of the universe, too. Say you have a new moon, and it's new in Aries. That means you can make photographic memory, instant emotional decisions, and usually be right on 100% of the time. You can even mix in other aspects, like Libra, and use the planet Jupiter, and even the Sun, which is for perfection, and create a trine, which is simply a circle with equal division of 120-degree angles, like the Mercedes symbol. Place those 3 planets at the 3 points, and then put them in the zodiacal aspects you're looking for: Aries, Leo, Sagittarius. It'll be all fire and water. That causes a specific effect. It creates gas, which is the mental aspect of the mind. See, these are all mappings, because the words are inadequate, but it's the sensory perceptions that you're really stimulating. So when you use the moon, and you use it in a fire or an aggressive way, you can deal with high emotions, low emotions. You can calm people down. You can stir people up, definitely. Anything you can think of is done by the planetary forces.
Sure.
You simply have to figure out which ones you want to use, throw some energy into them, attach them to a target.
What we're talking about is, like, Carl calls this creating an astrological greenhouse, or astro boost. He's got a system for that. And basically, you're talking about, you can actually take, let's say you've got somebody who's a Leo and wants to be a little bit more like a Capricorn. You can set up trends with your machine to change your astrological trends that you were born with by changing the type of greenhouse effect you set up for yourself. Now, you can also go a little bit differently, and you can do something which is my forte, which is remote influencing, and you can influence somebody else and create a different greenhouse effect for them, and they'll never even know you had done it. So let's say you've got a child who is a little bit errant in their ways. You can use these sort of things to influence their behavior patterns and get them to calm down a bit, be a little more coherent. Or let's say you're working in a court case where you need to make things a little more chaotic. John, you want to cover something like that? Have you got any examples like that?
Yeah, there's a planetary setting that calls it a chaos bomb. Very effective against opponents in lawsuits. I had some outstanding results with it.
Could you detail one of those?
Anonymous? 4 planets in squares in 155-degree angles. I think it's 155. I haven't checked it out or measured the filter that Carl came up with. But something else Carl has been able to do with his greenhouse effect is create planetary aspects that would never naturally occur, like using Jupiter 3 times and in a trine position. So you have 3 Jupiters in a trine, and you have them all in one sign. That never naturally occurs in the universe. So you can literally take Carl's machine and create something that never would have happened.
I remember when you taught Evan this, Evan came to me one day, we were at the coffee shop talking, and he had been on the line with you talking about different things. We were doing a financial program for me, and he used that exact possibility. He took, I think it was Neptune and something conjunction, and did it several times in the program. And I have yet to run that and not get a stream of orders from it.
Yes, this technology it's extremely addictive because it's got such possibilities that when you start manifesting things, you have to make yourself literally a to-do list. Write out at least 100 things you want to accomplish, because you don't want to be all over the page, bouncing all over the walls like a ping pong ball, because you're going to get very excited when you start using this stuff.
It goes back to being centered and meditating.
Yeah, and any mainstream entertainment is nothing but a distraction. This machine takes you completely out of that. It's opposite way to operate your brain, to be aware. And when you start becoming aware, all you can do is pity those around you with a smile. And the ones that see a smile on your face are probably going to come up and ask you what's going on. Those are the ones you want to show the technology to. You don't want to show it to anyone who doesn't really care. I show this stuff to some people and they go, "Wow, yeah. So what's on TV?" They're just completely have no idea what's going on.
They obviously didn't get their red pill yet.
Yeah, right. Yeah. They get the placebo, and it gave them gas.
Placebo. Hilarious.
The placebo effect really is very interesting, because the placebo effect accomplishes the same percentage rate success as the drugs do. So I don't think the drugs work at all. It's the mind's expectation that allows the drug to work or accepts the healing from it. Most drugs are probably useless. Not that I've ever personally had to find out that one.
When you're trying to influence different things and you're setting up these structural links to get what you want, as long as you think about two things, you need to know what your energy source is, obviously, like John was saying. But you also, if you have a target, you say to yourself, all right, now, what kind of obstacles might be in the way? And then what you say is, now, how would I get there if there were no obstacles? And then how would I get there if there was this obstacle or that one or that one? What would I use to get around, over, under, or through the obstacle? And by doing this, you're able to set yourself up so if one way doesn't work, you simply switch tactics based on what you think is the most likely obstacle, and then try again. And these devices, since you have an unlimited amount of structural links you can pull off of the web or in dictionaries or newspapers, those pictures all carry energy with them, and they mean something to you. And so when you see them, you can apply them to different things. And that's really where the masters come in. That's the reason why people like John, when he does TVO-PK broadcasts in Carl's forum, the Orgone forum, Carl and Renat set this up. And when you do these, John will literally go through and he'll set up and show you all different kinds of what we call filters, but they're basically the archetypes that you're going to use to get to your target. So if you get one of the devices, you can actually get a software program that's built just for it that has about 100 of those things, and the basic one, I think it is. And you can start with those and get quite a few already, so you have ideas on how to do it. And then what we always teach people is get your archetypes, get all those pictures ready, and then put them into a free program like Paint.net, and then change the color slightly, or change the brightness or contrast, or put some text on it to make it individual to you. And then you can print them out and use them on the generator, or you can use the software program and link the computer to the generator and do the same thing.
Yeah, literally artificial intelligence.
Exactly. All you're using the software for and the archetypes is to help you focus long enough on whatever that symbol or filter is so that you can get the idea of that particular effect linked to your energy that you're sending out to get it done. That's what you're really doing.
Yeah, your intent and your affirmation will find what you're looking for in the data stream. It's like a library. So your intent and your affirmations are going right to that aisle, right to that book, and pulling it out.
Very interesting.
About those pictures, though, you have to make sure you use pictures of real events. You don't want to use any type of advertising or that kind of stuff. You might end up with one of the models' drug habits or something. You definitely want to use a real photograph of an event. It won't have a data stream. It'll have a data stream, but it won't be what you expect, probably.
Yeah, if you take a picture of Porky the pig, you're not going to get much.
Right.
Guys, I think this is a good place to stop for our first break. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
I spoke to Mr. Carl Hans Wells yesterday, and he was very kind to give our audience a long list that I'm very grateful for of websites that are free programs to enhance your chi or psychic ability, and I will mention them now, and Tamara will add them to the YouTube link as well. But I'll mention them as slow as I can. Just please go to our YouTube channel, and they should be tagged underneath that video. But the first one is hscti.org, orgone.net, pranagenerator.com, Acor, that's akor.cc, magicofthefuture.com, magiccourse.com, runemagic.com, artogenetic-training.org, metatrance.com, tarotspells.net, talismanmagic.com. And Carl offers free rune courses from rune reading to rune yoga. And he uses a new approach since 1980, runes as the energy of creation and the three realms, inner, outer, and a realm of creation. So please feel free to take advantage of all of those resources that Carl has so kindly given to us. Please, during the break, also feel free to visit our YouTube channel and sign up for Truth Connections on YouTube as a subscriber. And please feel free to join our Truth Connections Facebook page or visit our truthconnections.wordpress.com website. Our first break song is called Inward, Onward, and it's by Villains Like You. This song is the one that we have used dubs from in our new intro, and I would like to personally thank them for allowing us to use it. So we will see you back in about 4 minutes and 47 seconds. Please enjoy the song, and we'll talk to you soon. are back, and we're going to get into lots more topics regarding this technology soon. And I'd like to mention that Jeff's website where you can check out some of this technology is jefftech.net. That's JEFTECH.net, jefftech.net. And John, why don't you tell everyone about your book and where they can get it?
All right. It's about 150 pages, and it's all from research and development, working with this equipment and working with Carl over the last 20 years. I've rewritten the darn thing probably 10 times because this technology is a kind of technology that builds upon itself. A lot of times I'll be practicing something, and 60 to 90 days later, something manifested I didn't expect. An example would be I was working on my hearing using Q-tips and tuning in the noises and the sounds I would hear using earwax, which is a structural link to my auditory sensory perception. And about 2 or 3 weeks of practicing this, I started to be able to hear with my bones, something I never expected. More specifically, my skull, the back of my skull, where it's there's a hollow spot in there where the vertebrae connect to the back of the skull. And I can feel a surface tension, I guess is what it would be, of usually low bass sounds, industrial sounds, machines, trucks, bulldozers. Well before I can physically hear them with my ears, I can feel the vibration in the back of my skull from using this technology. I never expected that at all. And I'm sure that each sense probably has, there's no telling, probably 3 or 5 more ways that it can be grown, I guess is the best way to put it, or developed.
It's interesting, John, that you say that, because I know that I don't remember the chiropractic adjustment, but there are people that are getting that axis in the back of their neck adjusted, and that says it enhances their well-being. I wonder if that has any correlation to what you're talking about.
Well, definitely the occipital bone. That's where there's a space in there. It resonates or vibrates when there's a low bass or industrial sound close enough in my environment. So I've nailed it down to about 2 miles so far from paying attention to what's been going on. But the book has got all the foundation you need to take back control of your mind. People don't realize that with the television, the radio, office politics, just everyday bullcrap of life is really having their brain run the mind. The brain is overstimulated, and so the mind is paying attention to the brain, and the brain can't think for itself. It can only react. It goes in an infinite loop backwards looking for a remedy to the terror of the obsessive compulsiveness that it's suffering. And that's why everything is nothing but a temporary fix, whether it's drugs, a new lover, new car, new house, new job. It never satisfies to the point of what they're looking for because they don't know what they're looking for. Their mind is not in control of their brain. Their brain is in control of their mind, is running backwards. So when you take back control of your brain, you literally have doubled your intelligence, so to speak, because now you can think anytime you want if you have to create a problem solve or take a physics test or finish a crossword puzzle. But being aware without thinking is another talent or hidden skill of the human mind that is completely taken away from us before you're even born. Your grandpa and grandma were trained into this obsessive compulsive. It's consumerism. It's constantly bombarding your senses to buy stuff, to consume things, to satisfy yourself, to identify with the cars they drive or the shoes they have on. And it's really a very inadequate way to express yourself or to define yourself. It's more fun to be aware. It's hard to put into words until you start practicing it.
Well, we've had Neil Slade on, and he does the teachings with tickling the amygdala, and Jeff's familiar with him. And I can't help but think that being creative or having creative outlets would only amplify those gifts as well.
Yeah, well, the amygdala has a lot to do with people who have emotional problems, schizophrenics, bipolar people, and it may be an imbalance or an overstimulation to a certain part of the amygdala, so it kicks out, or it causes carcinogenic hormones to be released. People get stressed or angry, and literally anger eats you away from the inside. But the book's available at onebrainmanual@gmail.com. It's called the Brain Evolution Manual. You literally get to play party to your own evolution. You're developing. We've had 5 senses for how long? Since the cavemen? And we still have 5 senses.
Yeah.
We haven't really advanced very well. We've taken a step sideways, if anything, probably perhaps backwards. I bet you the caveman wasn't so obsessive, compulsive in his behavior. It was probably more telepathic and psychic than we are today, where they go out on hunts, grunts and body movements, and just they would know what each other's going to do because they're talking to each other telepathically. They're more aware than we are today. So
if you've ever been in the woods and you were a hunter or a tracker or a hiker, you probably watched animals. And if you watch deer and others, as they go along and browse, they go up to a plant and they put their face, their nose right next to it where all those sensory organs are. And before they take a bite, they sense it. And in caveman days, we more than likely had those skill sets, and we've lost that. So now we go into a grocery store and we pick up a genetically modified apple and have no clue it's bad for us. Yeah.
John, how did you get interested in this technology?
One of my best friends introduced me to Carl when he was working downtown Atlanta. I went down to meet him, and he just blew my mind. And so I started taking classes from him in physics and metaphysics. And he had all these machines around his apartment. And after 2 or 3 classes, when I figured out what the machines were, I asked him for one. Carl gave me the shirt off his back. He's a very kind gentleman. So he gave me one. He gave me 2 or 3 of them, really. And I started pulling off all sorts of stuff because my expectations were I knew what the machine was, so I knew it was going to work, and I didn't have any preconceptions of failure or I didn't really know what I was doing. So it's like painting a picture for the first time and you paint a Mona Lisa. I was pulling off some very good effects, not just for me, but for everybody around me.
Sounds like you have an innate understanding for this technology.
I think I've done it before.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Now, guys, I don't know who wants to take this question, but how does the orgone energy work in comparison to the radionics technology?
If you want the physics behind it, if you look at a standard radionics device, not something with all the power of Carl's, they basically use a couple of plates, your trend and your target. You've got a witness well, they call it. But what it basically is a couple of traces, electronic traces, that spiral in on each other. And sometimes they're geomagnetic patterns. But they make 2 traces, and they energize each one. And when those 2 waveforms meet each other, one is positive, one is negative, they collapse to 0. And if you look at Maxwell's original equations, it creates a graviton wave going out, or whatever you want to call it, graviton, scalar, whatever. Currently, they're thinking that they're all types of gravity waves, but I'm not sure that's the case. But the point is that with the physics behind the old-style devices was basically take those waves, collapse them, and use that collapsing energy wave to transmit the thought form of the archetypal images for the trend and target to the target. But with those devices, you're powering the entire operation with your energy field. So once you're done focusing on it, you go back to having lunch or doing whatever you're doing. Who's minding the store? Who's keeping the operation running? Well, that's the problem. And so Carl's machines link with your energy field, and long after you went to dinner or back to work, those things are still pumping massive amounts of energy over to the target to keep it running.
Now, as in a lot of technology, like Tesla technology, some of Keshe's technology, this technology could be used for bad. Do you want to tell the audience on the bad scale what they use this technology for, like HARP and things like that?
Go ahead, John.
The only thing I would have to comment on that is if you think you're under any type of psychic attack or anything, I can show you how to use the equipment to 100% defeat any type of a psychic attack.
Because this technology is, in effect, a milder version of HARP, a much milder version, is it not?
I think it's all related. I believe HARP uses electromagnetic energy.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
They're related, but they're not the same.
Right.
If you look at it this way, the military weaponized this a long time ago, and I'll tell you one of the experiments that the Navy did, and they did it right here in Pennsylvania. There's a cornfield that was loaded with locusts. So they drove a post in the ground outside of the field and put a wooden box on top. Inside the wooden box, they put a bottle of pesticides. And then they stepped back a few feet, and turned on a scalar wave generator. And they blasted those waves through the box, through that pesticide bottle, and out into the field, and they killed all the locusts. Not one drop of that pesticide ever touched a locust or a plant, but yet they killed them all because they took the information field of that particular bottle of pesticide and they transferred it to everything that was within that wave hit out in that field. The good news is they killed the locusts. The bad news is that wave didn't stop traveling for a very long time. And so a lot of good people got dosed with that. So once they realized they could do that, it was a hop, skip, and a jump that they were going to weaponize it, and that was done a very long time ago. And when you talk about these type of energies, way back, and I told you about this, Kathy, back in the Aztec days, they would be up there on the ziggurat with all the steps up to the top, and they'd be lined with people from the village, and the priest would be in the background, and there would be an altar up at the top, and they'd take some young poor guy, and they'd whack him, or they'd take a goat, and they'd whack the goat. And as they killed it, they would take that emptying life force energy, and they would put that to the operation of the priest.
Because when someone is killed under those conditions, the adrenal gland or the pineal gland is operating at a really high impact, is it not? And,
well, yeah,
and that's how they can harness that?
The organic energy field is being released.
It's a massive pulse of energy.
Sorry, Jeff. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's okay. It's a massive pulse. So they would use that to power their operation. And granted, they didn't have a machine, but they would use a chicken. They would use a goat or a slave.
That's funny. That's what Carl's machine was called, the automatic chicken.
Exactly. Or for the heavy-duty ones, the automatic goat.
Yeah.
Guys, I can't help but think, and I don't know if this is in any way associated with this technology, but from having shows on with people from the Disclosure Project, CSETI, the CE5 Contact Global Initiative, these people have been out in the field when UFOs manifested. And the ETs, I guess, learned a long time ago that they were getting shot down when they got in our airspace. So these guys told me that when you see like a big storm cloud appear out of nowhere, that is the UFO, in effect, shielding itself from the radar so they don't get shot down.
Well, I do know that they go in and out of the infrared spectrum. And the reason I know this, there was a TV show a long time ago where they had, they were doing an expose on something, I can't recall, but there was a set of pilots. And these were interdiction pilots. They were down in Florida's coast, driving a small Cessna or something, and they were using forward-looking infrared radar, as well as the regular radar. And they saw a fast walker coming across the screen, and they saw it physically in their eyes. And then all of a sudden, it winked out, and it went away. But yet it was still on their forward-looking infrared radar. It had blinked off into the infrared spectrum. And when they checked with ground control, the same thing happened down there. Ground control does not use FLIR, or forward-looking infrared. They just use regular radar. And they caught it up until the point it blinked into infrared. So they have the ability to do a shift of some kind. I'm not sure how it's accomplished, but they obviously have the ability to shift in and out of our visual perception field, which is extraordinarily narrow.
Right.
So there's a lot of that goes on out there. And, if if the government would have you believe there's no such things as UFOs, yet they're all over hieroglyphs from thousands of years ago. So I find that to be kind of funny.
No doubt. I've seen them plenty of times. I'm a total believer. They've been in my bedroom.
John, maybe you could talk a little bit before we take some calls about a particular case I just ran into. I've got someone that's an attorney that's going to be, one of the attorneys that's interested in radionics, is going to be getting either probably a 2400 HD or a Rad 5 from me. And basically is going up against a past person who has owed her a lot of money and has manipulated the court using whatever and been able to stifle her ability to get the job done. Now, if you were to come up with something to suggest as a way of perhaps working on a case like this, could you give us some of the ideas without getting into the specifics that you and I will talk about offline with her?
Yes. I've noticed lately in my work helping people manifest things that so far things appear to be at least bipolar, or yin-yang, black-white, yes-no, positive-negative. There seems to be a duality in the manifestation process, too. I had a friend of mine in Canada who's trying to get her boyfriend to be obsessive about her and spend all his time with her. And so she has a Rad 2400. They have sound loops. You can put MP3, or you can connect your computer right into it and run a manifestation program using sound frequencies, too. Classical music works really good because sound is very powerful on our tissue. It has effect on the physical tissue, just sound does.
Absolutely.
Fire alarms, people cannot stand the sound of them, they have to leave. So that's an example of what you can do with some of the sound. But I told her that she's putting out this positive affirmation of what she wants to happen, the obsession of her. And I said, now to make it manifest quicker, you have to ask yourself, what influence or trend do I have to create in myself for him to manifest that manifestation or that affirmation? It's like a puzzle piece. You create the negative space or the condition in your target, which is you and him, mainly you, and then you plug the piece into it. So the duality in all the manifestations, they work faster that way.
Excellent. I know exactly what you're talking about. That's another thing, like when you go in for a job or there's something else you want to accomplish with another individual, you can use a nepotism filter.
Yeah, nepotism works great.
To create the feeling that you are related, and they will actually treat you better and differently. And that's also very powerful.
I bet Congress uses that nepotism function for their advantage.
They'd never have a job if they didn't.
I'm sure of it.
It's not like they do it anyways.
Yeah, exactly. They don't even read the bills they sign. They just sign them.
Yeah.
It's probably just a stamp from their secretary, their administrative assistant, which is even more scary. Don't get me started.
Right. I was going to tell you.
Could you imagine if we had 1,000 people, even 100 people, that all had generators, and we ran the same program to change something with 100 people's own energy field, plus the energy field of 100 machines, all at the same time, all with the same exact program, all with the same target and trend. You can imagine what we could accomplish here on the planet.
Absolutely. The possibilities seem pretty groovy indeed.
Well, there's a device out there that they've been using to, it's a standard radionics device. It's not nearly as powerful as Carl's, but they take a bank of them and they use them to clear the energy field of forests. And they've been so good at it, different countries have asked them to do it. But you could take one of Carl's devices and outmatch all of the energy of all of those devices at the same time.
Well, Carl's done extensive research in agricultural with plants and fish, and it grows approximately 4 times faster than normal. And the reason behind it, in my opinion, the mapping I use to understand it, is that if you take, let's say you have 1 million molecules in a fish, and you add 10% more orgone energy, it's going to have to produce 10% more molecules to accommodate the energy. It's just simple cause and effect. Or you use the energy in the matter, responds to the energy, and it creates more matter. It grows faster.
That goes exactly with what you were saying before, John, about the, how do I phrase it? When we were talking about the actual field and protecting you from the effects of EMF and things like that, you basically are boosting yourself. And by doing that, you're actually eliminating a lot of the stressors that hold back the growth of the fish, the plant, whatever.
Right.
It would be interesting to do a test on a chicken ranch to see what would happen if you took some eggshell and started taking that and a little albumin, maybe a touch of yolk, and did a trend for the entire layer section. Imagine what you might wind up getting out of that. It would be very interesting.
Yeah, you could probably do it live right on site with a couple of farmers, or you could probably even do it remotely from Google Earth.
That's an interesting thought. I haven't even considered using Google Earth. Nice idea, John.
Well, Carl's really good with it. I hope he doesn't get mad at me for saying that.
Guys, how do you feel about Keshe's work and what his devices...
I'm hoping he goes further and he doesn't get whacked.
Yeah, I hope so too.
I don't think he will.
If you listen to that Thomas Bearden video a couple of more times, I've listened to it 6 or 7 times so far, and there's one point in there I've got to re-look at a couple of times, but he talks about using radionics devices like Carl's, and for all I know, Carl's probably sold him a few devices. I wouldn't doubt it. We'll have to ask him that question another time. I know he's listening, so he knows to expect that. But he talks about using radionics to extract free energy out of the vacuum, using exactly what we talked about. And what he was talking about in there is when you set up a link between your trend environment, your target, your alternate target, and the basic action you're performing. There's 5 pieces to that software. When you set up a link in a program like that, every one of those points connects to every other one, all simultaneously, and what happens is, as they keep hitting each other back and forth, that beam width narrows down to a micro-fine, razor-thin beam that creates massive amounts of energy flow. And that's really how it works. So it's entirely possible we could be using these devices to do free energy work within another year.
I also can't help but think in certain UFO or ET circles, they believe that the people who occupy some of these ships, in particular the smaller ships, the light ships, that the ETs take what is around them from the fabric of what is around them and construct that ship with whatever matter is around them, floating around like Wonka vision. And once they do that, they in effect become the consciousness of that ship, and that's how they can morph and things like that.
Well, it would be interesting to actually find that out for a fact. Because
yeah, sure would.
Biological structures that contain consciousness and function would, in my mind, be the ultimate type of vehicle. Because literally you would have a relationship with your transport vehicle, a conscious relationship. And you know me, one of the main things that I play with is consciousness projection into animate and inanimate partners. So one of the things we've done is, I work with the Shiva neural stimulation system and the Shakti system. Well, I've been combining them with the radionics device. And the way we do it is we run a stimulation session first, and then 90 minutes after you run a session, a particular window opens up in your mind. And if you then use your radionics device, there are capabilities we haven't even touched with consciousness projection. But John has probably done consciousness projection just using the machine and a basic stick pad. John, could you go over the stick pad response real quick?
Yes. I never had much luck with the stick pad because I had sweaty fingers, or that's when I was beginning in the radionics and I didn't quite understand it. I'd be setting rate and I would be thinking to myself, am I setting the correct rate? Well, it turns out the answer is no, because the energy is so subtle and so directed that all I did was set a rate for doubt or for wondering about the rate, instead of connecting to the rate and staying focused on it.
Yeah, early on when you first start, it's important to focus on what it is that you're trying to do, not setting the rate, because you'll notice the setting of the rate if you just focus on what it is you're trying to do. Sooner or later, your finger will stick. One of the tricks early on with that is get a piece of silk, like a silk scarf, put it on a table, and then put your generator on the silk scarf. And that way, when you're doing the stick pad response, where you're turning the dial to tune it in, while you take your right middle finger and you draw a counterclockwise circle on the stick pad, and you just keep slowly turning the dial. Once you get your stick pad response, the whole machine will move because that silk is so slippery, and it basically amplifies your ability to feel the stick pad response.
Right, and you're looking for the resistance. That's the frequency.
Yep.
I didn't know. It took me probably a good 2 years to figure out that the resistance was what I was looking for.
Right.
That's part of not knowing what I was doing. You know, the dial would stick, and I didn't realize I just hit the frequency. It was hit or miss back then. That's all been taken care of for any newbie.
Well, one of the things that Carl talks about, too, for beginners, you do not have to master the stick pad response. You can set an arbitrary setting as long as you know, like write down what it is you're trying to set it for, and then arbitrarily set the dial, which John's become a master of. And what will happen is you'll still be able to set the response because you are actually knowing exactly what it was that you were trying to accomplish.
You can generate the field before you even set the rate. An example would be what we were talking about that we're not going to mention about
exactly
how to get a one-night stand. But basically, you can create a very erotic frequency, get yourself pretty worked up, and then go over and set a rate for that, and then think of your target. And that energy is probably going to be overpowering to that target, not in the same heightened state that you are. So your arbitration has got more energy to it, and negative entropy dictates that your setting will be more powerful. It will draw their energy or draw their attention because it's a stronger field.
There's a question in the chat room, guys, if you don't mind my asking.
Sure.
Someone is asking how you feel about Randy Powell's donuts. Evidently, his energy device is known as Randy's Donut based on Marco Rodin's work. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Well, the Rodin coils are electromagnetic devices that create a vortex field of the electromagnetic flux. And they've had some stunning effects with it. But they are not radionics devices per se. They are more designed to actually create energy out of the vacuum and draw it out of there. And from what I've seen so far, they've been able to put in like 30 volts and get out 230. So they're actually getting what some people ignorantly call over unity, when in fact, there's no real such thing. Because when you start extracting out of the ether, there's unlimited energy out there in the vacuum. So there's no such thing as over unity.
Well, think of the word itself, over unity. What's the opposite? Under unity?
Exactly.
It's a bullcrap word.
It sure is.
Uh-huh.
That's why I really have an issue with the way they talk about some of this. They need better physics underpinnings of what's really going on. And Tom Bearden's website is a great place to go. They're not doing anything like what Carl's units do. They're basically for doing energy production.
I'm told we have someone that's going to call in soon. Why don't we take our second break now, if you don't mind? Is that okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, great. We're going to play our second break song. It's by a friend of mine, Fred Cusinado. It's called Round the Corner Mother Funker, and it's in 432 hertz. Enjoy it. We'll be back in a minute. We are back, and we have a call holding. Hello, you're live with Truth Connections. Is this Jason Warden?
Yes, it is.
Hello, Jason. How are you, brother?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. I had a couple questions regarding the sensory perception of these UFO technologies. There's two things that I've noted regarding UFOs is that they're always disappearing to the human eye. There's many species of animals that are on this planet that can see in infrared. There are many animals that can sense, like a version of radar. Even bats or sonar can perceive these objects, but we cannot. And I find it very interesting that our senses are really what they're trying to tune out, so that they're not perceived, so that they can remain hidden from us. And I believe that's one of the main things that I've noted. And my question is, why do you think that they don't want to be seen? Is it just a matter of fear that they just don't want to scare us? I mean,
they don't want to be shot down.
It wouldn't be wise for me to jump in front of a lion. Even if the lion's calm, it may not like me, and it may want to cause me harm. I may be way more advanced than a lion, but I certainly don't feel it would be wise to jump in front of one. So I just wonder why you think they just want to be hidden, and do you think their intention is eventually for us to perceive them and understand them?
I think intention is everything, and I don't think they mean to scare everyone. I think they show themselves to people that they know can handle it, honestly. But
well, I think that's the case in some, but just like every other race that's ever been, there's good and bad, and I'm sure there are some with bad intentions as well as good intentions. So one of the things that I know is when I grew up in a little town called White Mills in Pennsylvania, and we had quite a few UFOs coming through there. In fact, one dropped down into Rhinings Pond, and the military showed up right after. And if you knew how many space-based weapon platforms we have, you'd be trying to hide too, because they can literally track a lot of this stuff, and even if they can't do a direct hit, they can cross target. And unless you're really good with one of those craft, you could wind up getting hit by the second or third or fourth or fifth or sixth being. We've all seen the YouTube videos where a UFO is coming in towards Earth, and one of those particle beam weapons shoots at it, and the thing just does a right angle turn and gets out of the way. But if you got 15 or 20 of those satellites up crisscrossing, your odds of getting out are a lot lower. So yeah, I'd be hiding too, and I'd show up for those who really were not interested in creating havoc on my.
Sounds like a live game of Space Invaders.
Yeah, a lot like that.
It really does, and I think
that's
the
why
companies
the youth are really going to change things. They're so much better at it than. I mean, look at the guy who's ever crashed that plane in Pennsylvania, couldn't use his joystick.
Very true.
Yeah, he's probably over 40.
Yeah, you're right. I think the youth are definitely the answers. I mean, one of the main things that we've all become aware of is that the educational system is just suppressing creativity and original thought and the ability to just kind of want to understand everything around us rather than fall into this line. And I think that you're right about that they do not want to be shot down by us. And I think these oil companies, these transportation companies that are making trillions of dollars and have the power to control the movement of people, I could see why they see life out there. They see these flying craft. They detect them through gravitational waves. They understand warp theory, but they don't want us to, because once we do that, we're going to leave the planet and say, you know what, screw you guys, we're going to go explore. And so they can't control us if we get that information. And I think it's the same thing where the ETs they might want to show up and say hello, but when they show up, they're being shot at, they're being shooed away. It's kind of like I don't want to use this analogy, but it's the only one I can think of. The overprotective father and his daughter. As soon as the boyfriend shows up to pick her up, the father just beats the boyfriend up and kicks him out and says, "Go away," and the daughter has no idea the boyfriend even showed up.
You were talking about being able to see in a different spectrum, and we all know that dogs see outside of our spectrum, deer do, but what's really interesting is so do we. At childbirth, you notice a lot of children are looking up in the corner of the ceiling, and they're giggling and laughing and smiling and waving.
Absolutely.
And trust me, that's not a fly on the wall they saw. So there are many things outside of our spectrum that we're born able to see, but we get trained out of it by our parents, our grandparents, the public, the idiots in the fool system, and they tell us, no, it's not real, just ignore it, move on, do what I tell you to do.
The societal indoctrination, you're taught to consume, and success is accumulation.
Exactly, because that's what keeps those big companies running and keeps you stupid. And your book, John, is literally a cure for stupid from the school system.
I appreciate that. That's exactly one of the reasons I wrote it.
You know, to touch base on what you were speaking about a minute ago, I've noticed more so lately, you know, when I'm out shopping or getting gas or something, and a mother or a father is walking with a toddler to like the age of 5, these kids seem to be mesmerized by me. I don't know if they're seeing something in my auric field or a spirit, but it's almost to the point where the parents become uncomfortable and they're like pulling the kids arm, like, why are you staring at that lady? They apologize for it, and I'm like, no, it's okay, and I just totally send the vibes back to that kid, and the kid's, no matter how far the parent walks away, the kid's looking back, and I'm wondering what that child is seeing around me.
I totally have to lose that awareness.
I totally believe that.
One of the things that we should do is we should start training the younger children to pay attention to the things they see and feel and ask them about them and tell them. If somebody tells you that's not real, you tell them to mind their own business.
That's right.
And that way, you know, at least they got a fighting chance of developing these skill sets instead of having them buried.
Step number 1, get rid of the television.
Yeah, I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just turn off the radio.
You know, you literally have thousands upon thousands upon thousands of YouTube videos out about great subjects, and it will beat any television program that's out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm always on YouTube watching a documentary or something like that.
Yeah, there's just way too much out there for us to do that way.
Jason, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Do you have any more questions for Jeff or Sean?
What do you think of the idea that there are so many signals flowing through us at all times just from Earth, but that there are signals coming from these ET ships, whether or not they are communications between a couple of bad guys arranging an abduction or a couple of good guys? Do you think that these youth are going to be able to develop the technology to intercept those communications and maybe finally answer the question, are we alone? Definitively, do you think that maybe that once we get to that level, that they'll be able to say, yes, we can talk to them now because we have that technology?
Well, let's take two parts of the question. First of all, we already know the answer that we're not alone. That's an easy one. But what you're really asking me is, do you think that in the next generation, we're going to have commonplace conversations with these other groups? And I think you're right, but I don't think it's going to take another generation for that to happen. I think it's already here. I think it's already happening. My only concern is that if there's truth in the stories that past presidents have made deals with them, then I've got serious issues with the groups they made deals with, because that tells me they're only interested in dealing with the leadership, which means they're only interested in dealing with the control structures. So there have to be civilizations, ET, etc., that are interested in dealing with the rank and file of the world and not dealing with the corrupt organizations. Now, if you were going to only deal with power structures, what does that say about you?
That you're corrupt.
You know, if I was only going to deal with my wealthiest clients and patients, what does that say about me? That's why I give away hundreds of hours of work.
Those, I would call them, for lack of a better word, dark forces, for the fact that they have to hide everything and their intentions aren't always pure. But they can't see the whole picture either. One child with 10 of those people, because they can't trust each other. They have juniors trying to kill dad, get his inheritance early, and those rich families poisoning each other's Diet Coke, stabbing each other in the back. They can't even trust the people in their own family. So that's what they're dealing with, and that's what they get.
John, if I had the choice of having a long conversation with an adult, regardless of their educational status, including the best physicists and metaphysicists, or having a conversation with, say, a 4 or a 5-year-old right after they learn to speak well, I would take the child every day, because I would learn more from them than I would from the other conversation. in how to be a human.
In the second book, I have an exercise where you get a newborn that's a couple months old and form a bond with it where there's no verbal communication. If we did ruin our kids' minds with words, they would be telekinetic, psychokinetic. They would interact with their environment.
Because words are just basically spells, aren't they?
Yeah, and they make it beg. They take your power away from you. You know, you want Mom to get you a glass of milk instead of you materializing out of the elements because you know how to.
I do think it would be ideal if we could take the children and teach them all manner of communication that's nonverbal, and then a couple of years later do an intensive to teach them the language so they didn't lose all the rest of the good stuff.
I think language, it would be, they wouldn't even need it. It would be telepathic. There would be a language there, but no one would hear them talking.
Carl just texted me on the alien thing we were talking about, and he seems to think most of them are tourists.
I
think that's true. We are a very interesting species, and the kids with telepathy. I think, as cool as I think it would be, I'm not a father, and I'm pretty sure every single parent out there, if the kids were telepathic, they either if they have twins, they believe they're already telepathic, or know that to be true, or B, a couple of kids silently staring at each other in the room with a grin on their face. Mom's not telepathic. I think they would want to have that language, audio language structure, so that they could at least understand what's going on.
Oh yeah, how does a mother know what her baby needs? She uses her senses, she uses logic, she uses the process of elimination, and
it's telepathic right from the start.
Right.
And then she destroys it by saying bottle 1,000 times.
One of the things we use the devices for is to enhance telepathic communication. Because when you put a piece of DNA from another person or their picture, a live picture on there, you can literally take, like the new Rad-5, which basically is becoming an affirmation machine, or like the 2400 HD, let's take that one. You can put a signal in, whether it be an affirmation that you've recorded on an MP3, or you can put it in a WAV file and put it in the software and play it over and over again. So let's say you want to communicate with someone, you can use their picture or DNA as the target on the device, and you can focus on that picture and then send them a word or a picture, and you can start practicing it. And it does not take many times when they pick it up before you start having that without a machine and being able to do it on a regular basis. I tested this with a fellow who used to be a cellular telephone salesman, and he was ex-Army, and he was a really nice guy. And I was just happened to be doing something, I can't remember what happened, but he popped into my mind very strongly. And I thought, you know what, that felt like a link. So I called him and I said, were you thinking about me about 5 minutes ago? And he goes, yeah, I was. Matter of fact, I was thinking about giving you a call. And I said, well, let's try this again. Let's do something over the next few days. Just, I'm going to think of you and concentrate really heavily. And we did this back and forth a few times, and it works very well. So you can use the devices to amp that up and get the initial connection started so you can continue on later even if you don't have the machine.
Jeff, what are some supplements people can take to increase the flow of chi? I've
done, quite a few, but we don't talk about any kind of medical or health benefits when we do a radionics show. Yeah, we don't need to discuss anything that'll give them a problem.
Well, are there, on the same token, are there any... Well, you already mentioned a lot of activities that we can do to enhance chi, such as meditate, probably yoga, things like that. Is there anything we missed?
I was using some steroids and dripping my blood onto lamination pages and putting a drop of the steroid oil on it and getting the same effect at the gym as if I was using them.
Interesting.
John has gotten very good at combining even the chemical structure picture with these things to get those effects.
Yeah, chemistry is very powerful, and so is the sound. Have you seen the man that uses the sound frequencies, and he uses, I think it's leather, like a drum, stretches it over a barrel and hits it with a certain song or a certain frequency, and he has sand on it, and the sand forms geometrical patterns.
Correct.
The sacred geometry.
The frequency has a lot to do with it, but so does the intent. And The reason I'm saying that is when we use tuning forks, we get the same thing. If we strike a tuning fork on a rubber puck and then we hit a signal analyzer with it, you get one waveform. Then if you strike it with a beautiful hunk of natural rosewood, you get the most unbelievably beautiful waveform you've ever seen. And when you talk about genning up chi energy, anything that gets you emotional will generate more chi energy. So if you're attempting to accomplish something, well, we don't really talk much about targeting bad guys, but if we were to, if you were to get yourself into a fury when you set your settings, you would have massive amounts of energy on that dark side. Conversely, if you're attempting to take somebody who you care about, who's maybe a little down in the dumps or whatever, and you get yourself massively charged up before you set the settings, and you get really happy and really excited. Think about somebody you fell in love with once, or something incredible you saw, and you feel that emotion. That's the way to do it.
The oxytocin, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that and a couple of other items, like, we use, that tuning fork for grief we use, which we think it's helping the dopaminergic channels, because when you get that dopamine flowing and endorphins flowing, like John was saying, that's pretty powerful stuff. And that panic breathing exercise in his book is a great way to get massive amounts of endorphins flowing.
I'd love to get a 432 tuning fork.
Oh gosh, they're all over the place. Randy Masters makes the best on the planet. And I do mean the best. He actually takes a special aluminum and he aligns the molecules, then he gets it cut, and then he gets it tuned. It's really good stuff. I've tested his against the best in the market that the doctors use, and man, what a difference in signal.
Well, when you can take this energy and create an emotion in a person, a target, you've just manifested a physical reaction out of nothing.
Yep. Yeah, remote influencing with these devices is a piece of cake. And John has got at least 1,000 ways to get that job done. I realize we've only talked about a few on the show, but no matter what it is you're trying to accomplish, if you tell him what you're trying to do, he can come up with a way to do it, and maybe 5 or 6 different ways. And so, John, something you need to discuss really quickly. If somebody does an operation, and it's one that should, by all measure, be possible and probable, and they do not get it, that means we have an obstruction in the way or a blockage. Tell them how they can know what the obstruction is and how they can get around that.
There's a couple of things you can check first. Right away, I would probably say their intent when they set the operation up. They didn't make a link to the trend or the target. They were either distracted or they weren't sure of themselves setting the rate, or the structural link that they're using is no good. Old photograph. Dried blood would probably still work, but if your intent's not very good, it could go astray. And as far as the blocks are usually from, obviously, the operator. When he's trying to manifest something, he might be lacking a quality. Let's say he wants a job that requires an aggressive or assertive person, but it's not in his personality. He gets an interview and he influences the personnel director, and he gets called back, but he doesn't get the job. It's because he didn't have the aggressive vibration in his personality, but he didn't manifest that in him. It's the puzzle piece again. The personnel director wanted to pick him because of nepotism, but absolutely couldn't because he was lacking exactly what they needed. So,
but that's probability, right? Because it wasn't probable.
And there's trends and filters you can use to reveal the stuff to you that you're not aware of. Secret operations, it's a data stream vibration that will give you all of the information that you need. See, when I set up a lot of my stuff, there's a square from the Abermillane book that tells you your trials and tribulations. So I mixed that with one for the future and one for secret operations, so that anytime I come up against something I didn't expect it would be bad, I had the perfect solution. So I feel like it's hard to surprise me. I wouldn't say I can't be fooled or surprised, but when bad things happen, it just doesn't seem that bad to me. Other people are freaking out. but I always seem to have the solution within 24 to 48 hours.
And that's mainly because you've got 20 years of experience setting these things up.
I did that one 20 years ago. It was one of the first ones I pulled out of the book when I thought tribulations, because the good things come easy. So I'd want to know when the bad things are going to happen and what to do about it. And you pre-program it. It might be 6 years down the line. Your subconscious got 6 years to work on that problem and had the perfect solution.
A lot of times what I do in that situation is I ask myself before I go to bed for it to reveal itself to me in the dream state, and a lot of times it does.
Yeah, that third dream state.
Yeah.
Do you get most of yours late in the morning, Kathy?
I think so.
Do you know how to tell the difference between a dream and an astral projection? If you're not, a lot of people leave their eyes and they're not conscious of it. They have out-of-body experiences, and they're not aware of it until they're on the astral plane.
Right.
And they think it's a dream. On the astral plane, there's no sunlight. There's light, but the light is equal everywhere. There's no shadows.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
So in your dreams, you'll create your reality: ocean, breezes, shadows. But on the astral plane, there's no wind, and there's no shadows. The light is equal in every corner of the room as it is in the middle of the room. That's what I've noticed when I've been out there.
I got to start paying attention to that. This is one I haven't even looked at.
I've never heard that either. Jason, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Did we answer all your questions?
Yes, you have. That astral point, the point about the astral projection, about that all light being is equal, that there are no shadows, you're absolutely right about that. I never even thought about it until you said it. And that makes absolute sense, because as creators, when we are dreaming and we are creating, we like to create all these nice things. If we're in the astrals, which a lot of people view as negative, it's you're not in control. You are there, but you are not necessarily in control. So therefore, you're not able to even create so much as a shadow. And you're right, that is definitely something to pay attention to.
There's a stillness about the astral plane too. Everything feels the same weight, or there's a pull on you when you're on the plane that you can. It's this kind of a calm stillness. I don't really consider the astral plane negative. I can see where heaven and hell came from for sure, but I've had a lot of fun out there. I've learned a lot of magic stuff from higher order energies on the astral plane. My guardian angel happens to be my grandma. She taught me how to fly out there.
That's cool.
It's a chakra, of course, the throat chakra, but I'll explain it to anybody who wants to contact me either through email or telephone, because my grandma made me swear. She swore me secrecy.
Why don't you give your email address again? Because they can also contact you there to get your book.
My email address would be a186234fa3@gmail.com.
Okay, thanks. Jeff, you'll find this funny. A friend of mine said they saw me on the astral plane, and that we flew around for a while, and that I was a pretty good flyer. And he said that afterwards I flew away, and then he saw me that I was taking on some dragon, and he literally said I slayed this dragon, or not dragon. I'm sorry. Let me repeat that. He said I slayed this dinosaur. I didn't think you were that gangster. I knew you were a gangster, but I didn't think you were that gangster.
That's cute.
I'm glad it's a dinosaur, because I'm a dragon.
I guess the question would be, did you have a barbecue?
Hey, did you see where they found that dinosaur skull with the valves in the back of the skull? It's got hollow chambers in the back of the skull that connect to the bottom of it and run down the backbone to a bladder, which they assume was perhaps a flammable gas.
Oh.
They think it's a dragon, not a dinosaur, which is really the same thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it, we as human beings generate methane in our intestinal tracts. If we do not have good intestinal flora, the food down there literally gets in the pockets, in the diverticulitis, and it actually rots and creates methane. And, of course, that's what gas is. So if you had a creature that basically had a valve,
a methane generator, a bladder.
Yeah, they literally, if they had a valve in there, they could just belch it out and boom. How they would light it, I don't know.
And maybe the atmosphere at that time caused it to ignite. Who knows?
You can use flint rock. If you have flint in your teeth, if you're chewing on certain things and it becomes part of your, I would say, like enamel or something, all you got to do is bite down. Have any kind of metals in your body. I mean, we humans have iron. So I could see sparking that with the flint rock.
Very possible. I know, Jeff, that you wanted to talk about the paranormal Schottky helmet before we left.
I actually did. I went over that. We have used it to basically set up to get even more powerful operations out of the radionics devices. Because it turns out that when you do one of those Schottky sessions, 90 minutes later, a particular window or portal, if you will, opens up in your mind where regular practices that are metaphysical, like meditation, astral projection, consciousness projection, or radionics operations that access your mind seem to have an amplified effect. So it's kind of an interesting thought, and I've combined both of them using the Rad 5 and doing the Schottky systems, and I've gotten some pretty spiffy results over it. I've had some of my more astounding nighttime sessions, usually an hour and a half, 3 hours later in that third dream cycle. But even without using the Schottky, I've changed the settings on my device every night and been able to keep massive dream states flowing. So it's kind of interesting what you can do, and like Carl was talking about when he said, just write down what you're focusing on and then set your rate, and you'll be able to get there. And you just simply run that a few nights in a row and see what your results are. So there's a lot that can be done with combining these different modalities, and I think it's worth trying.
Great. John, do you have a YouTube channel?
I think that I'm on there somewhere. tvopk.com.
Okay.
I'd like to recommend that because John has several videos up there, and he is astounding in them.
Excellent.
That's a television channel that Carl has.
Okay.
Perhaps I can get some other researchers involved. I've been connecting the 7 chakras, and there's 7 chakras, there's 7 planets, there's 7 notes of the musical scale, there's 7 colors in the white spectrum. If you can connect the 7 chakras to the 5 senses, you have a combination of 12 vibrations, and there's 12 nerves in the top of the cranial skull, the cranial nerves. And if you were to take the skull and cut it in half, there's 6 holes, and there's 7 holes, including the hole where the spine enters into the skull. So there's 7 holes there. I think that you can use sound to connect the chakras to the senses and stimulate or activate the 12 cranial nerves, which is our 7th and 8th sense.
There's that number 7 and 12 that keeps coming up.
Yeah.
Not a mistake.
John, have you been using settings to do that on the radionics device?
Yeah, I'm developing now. I'm trying to use, I'm using the musical scale and the colors of the rainbow, because it's uncharted territory, so I'm just flying by the seat of my pants with what I know. But I am getting some results. It's raising the kundalini and then connecting it to the 5 senses. The 5 senses are in the back medulla oblongata. There's 7 nerves. I think they're nerves. They look like feathers if you look at a cross-section of the medulla. And it's divided into 5 sections. So they divided 7 into 5. And you can't tell. It's evenly divided. The 2 that are on the borderline, when you look at the 2 next to them, they look the same. You can't tell which of the 7 points is connected, is divided into the 5 evenly. And so there's a nerve that runs up from the back of the medulla.
Are you talking about the vagus?
Well, that's the one that runs from the tip of your toes to the top of your head. That's probably it runs through the whole body. That's probably the one that you're going to use to bring the chakras up to the 5 senses. But it probably, the vagal nerve does run through the back of the brain up to the back of the skull. So that's probably the pathway.
There's a good book on that you can use to guide it. It's called Clinically Oriented Anatomy, and it's by Moore and Daly. And it's got every one of those nerves listed, where they go, what they attune to. So if you're trying to raise kundalini energy up through that nervous column, that might be an interesting thing to do. Because when you get a kundalini rise, usually I get 4 or 5 or 6 of them in the morning. After I get done with that third sleep cycle, I'll start laying there and just allowing a meditation to flow. And usually I'll get several of them. And when I do, right after that, if I drop back off into sleep, that's when I get some pretty interesting astral projections and sometimes out-of-body experiences or lucid dreams. So I see your point and I see what you're getting at. It might be interesting for us to do a tune-up with the chakras then raise the Kundalini, and then see what happens in the next sleep state. Can you, when you get done formulating your color versus sound versus chakra thing, and what you think the settings could be, send it over, and I'll experiment with it with you, and I'll send you over my results, and you can correlate them if you want.
I've noticed that using this technology, everything that I'm looking for with my intent, it just unfolds anyways. So I'm sure that our conversation is a result.
Well, I think a lot of that, again, has to do with you doing the mind control training, because once you do that, your intent is far more accurate or active than it was before.
Well, it almost becomes 100%.
I think so.
Well, that's what the sixth sense will be. There's a difference between thinking and knowing.
Oh, there sure is. Oh, my gosh.
And that's the two ways to operate the brain. There's three ways to operate the brain if you could connect those senses to the chakras. That would be the telekinesis, psychokinesis, and levitation, which is not foreign or strange to the human race. We all know about it. We don't know anyone who can do it. But almost everyone I know thinks levitation is possible. They never really thought hard about it, but when you ask them the question, they usually say yes. So it's not a phenomenon that's strange to us. It's our next evolution. We're stuck here in 5 again.
Well, I think it's already been accomplished in India by some of the yogis, but not often by a lot of people. I think it's very rare.
So it would be dangerous to show yourself.
Oh, my God.
The people that reach that level usually get murdered.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Kathy, have you done a show with Richard Allen Miller yet?
No, I have not.
You might want to look him up. He did a book on ESP induction that might tie into this a lot. And he was a guy who trained Navy SEALs many years ago, and he's a physicist who worked in the Black Ops projects, but when he figured out what was really going on, he left and became a dirt farmer. But he's one incredibly sharp guy, and he's written a lot of books.
Faye, I think you told me about him before. Thanks for reminding me.
Well, that would be a fun show, the three of us.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking too, John.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God, you two. I couldn't keep up, John. Come on, give me a break.
Come on, Jeff.
No, a physicist.
That's the Navy training.
Oh, come on. I'm sure we would get some crazy information from the three of your minds together. That'd be very groovy.
Definitely.
Well, it'd be interesting to see what happened anyway.
Why don't you go ahead and tell your website one more time, Jeff?
It's www.jeftech.net, jefftech.net, and there's only one F in Jefftech. If you want to email me, it's jef@jeftech.net. And if you go up to my menu on the main page, there's a section that's got some of the physics information on what I've learned off of Tom Bearden and some others on radionics, so that might be of help.
Very good. Thank you, as usual, Jeff. I'm grateful for both of you being here. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Now, I see Liza. Liza is on this call. Hi, Liza. How are you?
I'm good. The one thing I'm wondering, I know that these are tools that can really help us and get used to feeling our own potential, and then you're saying that we don't need the tools anymore. Is it possible that, a person can do this without tools?
Yeah, I don't think the Dalai Lama had a generator.
Yeah.
We are all human fringe check people. Yeah, but it's certainly nice to have toys to enhance our psychic ability.
The tools, they don't get tired, is what I noticed.
Right,
so,
exactly.
A lot of times I'll get inspiration about something when I'm not thinking of it, when my mind's empty and open. I like to keep my mind empty most of the time. I don't like chatter or radio or TV. In fact, I can go into a mall or a sports stadium, and with all that noise and commotion, my mind is still completely empty. Because the awareness that you gain from going outside with your sensory perceptions makes life so much more exciting that you don't want to operate any other way. You don't want to go out, kick your can down the street and feel sorry for yourself. That's no fun. It's more fun to be part of everything. That's where you'll see your friends, or however you want to label them, because they're aware. When we make eye contact with another aware person, there's a definite connection that goes beyond, hey, how you doing? Okay, take it easy. Have a good one. Whatever the cliche. Everyone's walking around talking in cliches. No one's communicating.
Yes, there's not a lot of eye contact going on. I noticed that too.
I went to New Jersey New Year's Eve ago. It was strange. It was like being on another planet. I walked into a supermarket and there had to be 400 people in there. There was no talking. Nobody was talking.
Yeah.
Everyone was looking down their feet. When I got back and I told my son about it, he goes, "Oh, that's the slave mentality." It dawned on me like that.
Yeah, it's true. When they all got tunnel vision.
If you're on the same path as somebody up there and you're walking right towards them, they might look up just for a second to see it, but they won't look in the eye and they'll walk right around you.
I go to the store and I look at people in the eye on purpose. I call it sprinkling pixie dust, because you don't have to say anything. You can look at somebody and say, "It's going to be all right. Have a nice day," without saying anything.
Yeah, smile says it all, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Smile with your eyes. That's all you have to do, really. Is there anything that you think that we haven't gone over, John, that you'd like to go over before you go?
I'm interested in definitely doing a follow-up show.
Definitely.
I'd like to get into some chakra training and sensory perception training with other researchers or people out there. Anyone who's interested is usually a superstar, because they're interested. Because usually they come up and do better stuff than I've done, or we work together and come up with some really
absolutely
stuff.
You can learn from everyone. They don't even have to know the technology, but they can give someone who is very schooled at it a light bulb moment that they never thought of.
Well, I've had strangers tell me sentences they didn't even know what they were talking about. They were talking about something completely different than what I got. I've noticed with the sensory perception, when you're aware and you're empty and you're talking to somebody, you're actually listening. Most people are thinking of what they want to say next.
Right.
And they're not really they're half paying attention, they're half hearing you. But when you become aware, when you're listening to somebody, they might talk for 2 minutes and say 5 paragraphs, but you only pick up 5 words, and you've got the exact truth.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you put together one sentence out of everything they said, and you know exactly what they mean.
Well, I will get with you and Jeff and see what we can schedule for.
Yeah, this was fun.
For a follow-up. Yeah, it was a good time, very informative. I hope the archives get listened to a lot, and people can view the show in Blog Talk Radio and in YouTube. So we love our shows to become learning tools for everyone.
Maybe we can get Carl on this next time.
That would be great.
You said the show was awesome. He said the information.
That would be great. It was really nice to meet Carl. That would be excellent. And for him to say that is really flattering to us as a show, because I know Carl does not do speaking engagements.
He's been invited several times to do television and radio shows, but he knows the television especially, they splice up all your stuff and rearrange the syntax and stuff, and they can make you look like a fool.
Mm-hmm.
So,
we won't do that to you.
But I'm sure he has good enough rapport with you. We have no problem.
Sounds like a plan. I'm excited about that. You, Carl, and Jeff, very informative.
Burn some CDs and send them around.
Not a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, it was fun.
Very good. That was great.
Thank you. At this time, I just want to say thank you to everyone for hanging out with us tonight. We are happy we kicked off our second year on air, and we are grateful that you keep coming back. In closing, I would like to give a shout-out to all of our TC admin team for helping us in very many ways, and they are Thomas Voot, Dee Dee Love, Cindy Lieberman, Heather Hamilton, Maud Cooley, Jason Warden, and Hal Tarrin. And I'd also like to say the moral of the story is a mind is a terrible thing to waste. On behalf of myself and Tamara, thanks for being here. Until next time, be good to each other. Peace.
Hi everyone, Tamara here. Just a reminder that you can connect with us through Facebook, as well as subscribing to us on our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Truth Connections. We'd love you to join us during live shows at blogtalkradio.com/Truth Connections. And for information on upcoming shows, visit our website at truthconnections.wordpress.com. Thank you for your support, and never forget that the truth is reality, and the connection is you.